Folks, what's going on? HeirofCarthage back in Total War Warhammer 2, and we've got you some FFA today. I've been showing a lot of the tournament battles, which were obviously kind of intentionally janky, little 1v1s, and figured you all need some more large battles in your lives, right? We're approaching the weekend. Things need to be large. And this one should be fun. It's an FFA on a very crazy map. This is a map that just kind of comes up to a peak here in the very center, and then falls off quickly on the sides. Now let's get a look at some of these armies, because there's going to be a pretty quick engagement. We have Albrecht de Bordelot, and he has 2 Royal Hippogriff Knights and a Royal Pegasus Knight in the air with him, forming quite the insane goon squad. Then I believe there's 4 Questing Knights and a couple of Grail Guardians. Did I say 4? It looks like 3. So 3 Questing Knights, a Grail Guardian, Damsel, 3 Grail Guardians. Holy crap. Yeah, so that's a lot. So just to kind of break this down for people not as familiar with these types of units, Grail Guardians are very resistant to damage unless it's magic damage, and they are extremely good against low armor units. Very, very good. Questing Knights are a very good unit against armored units, not as good against other cavalry on the charge, but if they come in after the charge or against single entity monsters after a charge, they will absolutely shred through armor. And same thing with infantry. If they can hit it in the back, they'll shred through it. So that's kind of a little bit of a rundown on what they do. And then as for the units in the air, the Royal Pegasus Knights are deadly on the charge to large creatures, but a little bit squishy afterwards. And then the Royal Hippogriff Knights really pump out damage against armored targets on the charge, and they are specifically anti-infantry. But they can also deal out some, sorry, they're not specifically anti-infantry. I was seeing something else. That was Ikit popping up there. They are specifically just armor-piercing. And they're very, very good on the charge against armored targets. Now, what are they up against? Well, WARZAG's leading a band of Dubois over here, and he has about, looks like 5 Blorks or Black Orcs. And WARZAG here actually has most of his spells. I think this player playing WARZAG is relatively new. But honestly, his army here is going to be kind of tough to take out. There's 2 Arachnaroks protecting WARZAG, who's got whatever magic he needs available. I don't think that's a great cost-effective way to bring him, but I mean, the rest of his infantry here is quite solid. Orc Biggins, Black Orcs. Black Orcs cannot be hit by Fear or Terror, and there's about to be a big fight here, and there's about to be a big fight on the other side. So what I'm going to do is cover this fight. I'm going to go briefly introduce these armies here, and then we'll catch this fight. I know some people don't like going in between, but it's really the only way to show these fights because there's a lot going on. Now, WARZAG did hide a whole bunch of Night Goblin archers over here, kind of in between the Skaven and the Vampire Coast, which are other players here. Now, the Vampire Coast has 4 Carronades, which on this map is a very strange pick indeed. They may not have been familiar with the terrain, and it's going to be very difficult to use these Carronades on this type of terrain. Now, as for the rest of their army, though, I love their picks. They've got the Night Terrors Mournguls here. Now, this is a Regiment of Renown Mourngul. And then there's 3 standard Mournguls. These are relatively quick-moving, high damage, albeit low armor units. They can get around the battlefield quickly, and they do replenish their health over time. So they're very, very handy for taking out infantry, basically. If you can get them into infantry, they'll do a whole bunch of damage. And they also are good because they cause fear amongst the units that they're hitting. Now, of course, the Night Terrors also cause terror. Very cool unit there. Now, they're led by a bunch of just zombie chaff here. This is always a solid pick. And then there's some more infantry over here. This is going to be 3 deckhand mobs with pole arms. They're supporting a couple of Johnny Depth guards here. So, got them. And then we have a Mourngul Haunter, which is a specifically anti-infantry, very high armor piercing damage monster here. Very cool monster, can do a lot of damage in the right scenarios. And then we've got Noctilus, and he's not all up on his glorious necrofex, but this dude on the foot with his polearm can cause a tremendous amount of damage. This is actually, in my opinion, the most dangerous form of Noctilus, because people will underestimate him a lot of times when he's on foot. He is very powerful. We're going to have 5 units of Clanrat Spears over here for the Skaven. And then we've got a Storm Vermin with Halberd protecting the Teeth Breakers, which is a Regiment of Renown Rattling Gun. Very good at suppressing fast-moving enemies and causing lots of armor-piercing damage. The suppressing effect slows enemies that it hits, so it's very useful. Poison Wind Mortars. And we're also going to have some Death Globe Bombardiers here. Supporting the Skaven is going to be a couple of Doom Flayers, very good anti-infantry units, and Ikit himself is on a Doom Flayer out here. With some more Clan Rats protecting the back, and then there's some Eshin Triads in the very back, as well as some Warplock Jezzails. So, interesting army here for Skaven. They can potentially cause some pretty good damage against infantry. Now, let's cover this side of the fight, and then we'll swing over, because obviously the Vampire Coast is about to fight the Skaven, and clearly here we're going to end up with a big Bretonnia greenskin fight. Now, at this point in my head, I'm just screaming, Foot of Gork, Foot of Gork, Foot of Gork. I mean, Foot of Gork is probably one of the best spells that WARZAG has, but the player who's playing here, I don't think is aware to use it in this situation. And some might be like, well, what's he thinking? Well, this is a good learning opportunity. Foot of Gork is tailor-made for this right here, a blob of cavalry. Infantry, it'll work too, but anything that is heavily blobbed and highly armored, Foot of Gork will absolutely annihilate. If he drops a Foot of Gork right here, it will just delete these units of Grail Guardians. They will be absolutely gone. So if you are ever fighting WARZAG, do not, and I repeat, do not blob your cavalry under any circumstances, or else he will make you pay. Now, he does use Effigy to get, and he pins down Albrecht de Bordelot. Effigy to get holds a single entity unit still and causes direct damage. WARZAG is going to be great for this. And the fact that the Blackworks cannot be terrorized and they have the spider support, Bretonnia is barking up the wrong tree here. This is going to be a fight that will not favor Bretonnia. This particular greenskin army is actually going to be, in this terrain, pretty resistant to this type of Bretonnian attack. These spiders are anti-large, armor-piercing, poison. They are going to really be dishing out the damage, and the Blackworks could route from leadership, but they will not route from terror. May not cause a lot of damage, but I like that there's magic damage going into the Grail Guardians. That's going to be one of the ways to help get rid of them. You can see here the spiders with the support of WARZAG and his infantry. I mean, this many Blackworks is going to be really difficult for any monsters to cut through unless they can tank the leadership. But with the spiders around and with WARZAG around, you're not going to be tanking the leadership on these Blackworks. These are the biggest and the artist of all the boys, and they are not scared of this situation. So, anyway, this is about 2.5, well, it'll be 3 minutes in by the time I get done talking, so you can see that this initial engagement here did not go well for Bretonnia. It was not the right engagement for them to pick, and the Greenskins are going to come out kind of the victor here, and Bretonnia is going to regroup and look for other opportunities. So we will see how that turns out. Anyway, I'm going to swing back over to the other side of the fight and show you all what happened there. Alright, so we introduced the two armies. We're going to show you what happens over here. The interesting thing here is that there's a whole bunch of Night Goblin archers hidden here that may have an opportunity to intercede. So we got to see kind of the initial deployments. I'll fast forward for just a moment here and get these guys closer to engagement. Clearly we're going to have an engagement between the Vampire Coast and the Skaven. If I had to give like a kind of a call out of the strengths of both these sides, the Skaven have a lot of infantry crushing power with these Doomflayers and this range. It's a question of how they're going to be able to use it. The key units for them to handle are going to be this Mourngul Haunter and the Mournguls over here. And you can see here that those Night Goblin archers make their presence known, which is an interesting way to do this because clearly the Greenskin player is going to be very focused on the other side of the battlefield. So trying to swing between these two fights, for a player to me that, I don't know if he's actually new, but it appeared to be new-ish because of the way he had all the spells on WARZAG. Maybe he just wanted to bring all the spells. I don't know. But these archers are in kind of a blob. They're going to get hit by the Teeth Breakers, and this is just free dinner for the Night Terrors here. And these goblins are going to be having terrors for days. If by Night Terrors they mean pants wetting. This is exactly what Mourngul Haunters do well, is smash through squishy infantry like this. And those Night Goblins get absolutely savaged. Meanwhile, you're going to have the Zombie Line looking to engage the Clan Rats. That would be a slow battle, indeed. There's a Pit of Shades here coming in. That is going to be a little bit brutal right on top of these mortars. So the Haunter comes in, the Pit of Shades. Brutal first hit. These, look at this, the Depth Guard just trucked the Storm Vermins who got terrified by the Mourngul Haunters. And so the Vampire Coast is off to a great start here, and Noctilus immediately gets into Natty Bubo's sharpshooters, and the Skaven are in a rough position now. This is going to be difficult for them to dig out of. Now, fortunately for them, with all these Depth Guard, they did dive in a little too deep here, and they're going to get hit by all these Doomflayers, which include the Dwarf Thing Menace, and the Vampire Coast will indeed be menaced by those Flayers. Now, they won't be menaced by a whole lot of anything else other than right now the Teeth Breakers, which are indeed shooting the teeth straight out of these Mournguls. I mean, that's if the Mournguls have many teeth left to begin with. These guys look like that they're in a state of pretty poor dental hygiene. But yeah, this kind of fire right here is going to be absolutely devastating, and you can see the Night Terrors are really eating it. However, that said, Here comes the big boy Haunter back here, disrupting all these things. And so the Teethbreakers are running out of support. And the fear and stuff has hit these Skaven that are fighting all these zombies. And Noctilus is able to get into the back of them, as well as some Morn Ghouls. So things are looking very, very challenging for the Skaven at the moment. This Haunter is literally haunting the back lines of Icketclaw and his army here. Nice shots with the Teethbreakers, though. Really got to give Icketclaw some credit. It's very difficult for him to protect these. These guys won't read a lot of kills at the end of the battle, but they did some tremendous damage over here to these Night Terrors and some of these other Morn Ghouls as well. So very cool stuff seeing them get engaged. But yeah, Noctilus is going to really be bringing some vengeance to this fight. Look at this. The Haunter just really, really doing some damage as well. He's taken quite a lot of damage, but I do believe Noctilus can heal some of these units as well. He's got the Invocation in the heck. Let's see what happens. Here comes Icketclaw and his Doomflayers trying to get to Noctilus. Now, they have a bonus versus Noctilus because he's an infantry, but Noctilus also has a bonus versus them because of his halberd. So that is a tricky fight, and killing Noctilus on foot is not easily done. It is actually really quite difficult to do unless you can get him surrounded by like armored infantry or something. And even then, he can summon up a lot of zombies. He can drown you in zombies, which is an appropriate way of saying it, I think, from a Vampire Coast faction. Now, we're already past the fight over there with Bretonnia, right? And at this point, you can actually see the cannons have been slowly moving forward this whole battle. And Bretonnia, of course, disengaged from the Greenskins and started heading this direction. They played a little bit of cat and mouse with each other, which is why the time difference here from about 3 minutes to where we're at. But they didn't do a whole ton of fighting over there after what I showed you. And Bretonnia is actually headed this direction. You can see them cresting the hill here. The terrain on this map can really create some singled-out engagements that can be challenging, but also interesting when it comes to the later game. Dillpickle and right now the Greenskin player here, Ionale, really have jumped out to the earliest lead, and both are in a good position to potentially win this. The Greenskins have a lot of units left, and then Dillpickle is just racking up the points. He may not be the last person standing, it just kind of depends on what happens, but I think the Greenskins have a very good chance of being the last person standing here, whereas Bretonnia has to make up a lot of ground for the inefficient engagement they took against the Greenskins in the beginning. Not to say they can't do it. They certainly can. They have a goon squad that's really good. They're just going to be very efficient with their engagements. Now back here, the Eshin Triads and some Clan Rat Spears are trying to get rid of the Night Terrors. These guys have done a terrific job on this battle so far for the Vampire Coast. Not exactly the type of fight they want to be in, though. Eshin Triads are pretty good against large targets that aren't very well armored, but look at this. Now more Morn Ghouls and some cannon fire, but look at the cannons. The cannons are completely unprotected. Bretonnia comes over the top of the hill, and the Knights of Bretonnia are going to really hit the scoreboard here as they come in and smash a bunch of artillery that's completely unprotected. So now the troops of the Vampire Coast and Noctilus, you can see Noctilus already dropping a summon in here, using the zombies to try and tie down all these units. Some of these units get a little squishier when you can keep them on the ground. That's exactly what they're aiming to do here, is keep them on the ground with all the zombies and bring in support. Morn Ghouls, not great against this stuff, but it's all that the coast has in terms of mass to try and keep these units on the ground. And the Bretonnian player does get stuck on the ground, and look at this. Nocti Boy is going to get in a fight with Albric, and you all are going to get a quick lesson here in just how potent Noctilus is against large targets when those large targets don't get away from him, and they allow him to continue to hit. Look at this. He got hit by the Withering, and even with the healing, Noctilus just absolutely owns Albric. I mean, just spanks him. It's like a schoolyard bully. Like, just pushed him straight out of that fight. And so that's where I've told you, like, do not underestimate Noctilus on foot. He is not the kind of target that is going to succumb to that kind of stuff very easily. You need more infantry surrounding him, and he's going to use his summons to beat that back. Now, Bretonnia also attacks over here with the regrouped Knights. Grail Guardians ought to be fairly potent against Morn Ghouls. The Morn Ghouls do get some armor piercing. It's going to be an interesting trade between these units. If these Grail Guardians and Questing Knights weren't so beat up to begin with, I think they would do better here, but they're in a rough position. Now over here, the Doom Players are trying to fight their way through some Questing Knights. This is not an ideal fight for Doom Players. You can see Icketclaw's going to spin up some lightning here, and that's a good shot. He wrecked that cavalry that had him surrounded, so that may have saved Icket's life, at least momentarily. You can see this Bretonnian cavalry is pushing back the Morn Ghouls, They are wanting to get out of that fight, and I kind of figured Grail Guardians and Questing Knights would be a little bit of a problem for the Mornghouls, just based on their situation. Now, the Hippogriff Knights and the Royal Pegasus Knights have done surprisingly well, considering they've been bogged down here and Noctilus has been here. These are tough units. They're a little squishier when they get stuck on the ground for a while, but the Coast just really doesn't have a great unit here for killing them other than Noctilus. And Noctilus is doing a good job of that, but he can't be in all places at once. Now the Haunter got some healing, swung over here as well. Now look at this, the Bretonnian Caster ends up in this fight. This is not where the Caster should have been. She should have been staying well clear of the fight. Noctilus and the Haunter now have her singled out. She has a little bit of support from some units nearby, but she is getting hit hard by Noctilus, and he's about to KO another Bretonnian leader in this army, and look, terrified from the Haunter. So just a great job by the Coast fighting this off. Now, Bretonnia did bring themselves back on the scoreboard very well with that engagement, very well indeed, and with that stuff over there. Now, Skaven, on the other hand, opened up looking fairly promising, but are now in a really tough position. These Mornghouls are just clobbering the Skaven. When they're in melee, they replenish as well. So the Skaven are in a very rough spot. It does not look like they're going to be able to pull themselves back together in this fight and be able to present a serious threat to the other players, and the position on the scoreboard is going to make it very difficult for Ikaclaw to do that. Fun army though, nonetheless. He got in a tough engagement here against the Coast. I really like the play from Dillpickle. Dillpickle's racking up some points. However, I don't know how in the world Dillpickle's going to deal with this. And you can see the terrain here has actually got these Black Orcs into a column formation. So yeah, sometimes when you drag a formation, like just right click and drag, this will happen whenever there's really tight terrain like this, and I'm assuming that's what this player is doing. This is part of the reason why I've assumed this player is relatively new, just because of the way they're going around. But I do love the army pick here. It's a little bit risky the way he's engaged. If the Bretonnians had had a good Vortex spell or something like that, it could have been very dangerous, but other than that, this is a tough as nails little greenskin army there, and if you don't have the best control over an army yet because of experience, that's not a bad way to go. Look at this, Noctilus Bretonnia's attempting to Zerg him. Not going to work easy though, because he's got these summons, and he does have a few Mornghoul support here, so he's going to be a tough customer. All these summons really make it more difficult to land hits on him. You can see the Caster did come back. Noctilus just nailed her with this bombardment ability. Whew. Yeah, that damsel got absolutely trucked there by that, so she's in rough shape, and all by himself there you can see Noctilus pushing back this kind of fight and just cementing the lead right now for Vampire Coast. The real question is last man standing. Usually the last man standing in FFA is the one who wins it, but that's not always the case, and we're going to get an interesting one here to see whether or not it's going to be the case. You can see the store difference right now between Ionale and Dillpickle is significant. However, if you just look at the last man standing potential, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but potential is really good for the Greenskins to be the last man standing, and there's going to be a big bonus there for being the last man standing, because honestly, the Coast just doesn't have enough meat left to take down what the Greenskins have, unless the Greenskins make a major mistake. However, they're getting a little help back here from Bretonnia, who's attempting to take one of these spiders out of the fight, and Bretonnia also trying to fight up that scoreboard and try and keep themselves in here. But I mean, this spider is a pretty tough customer. Royal Hippogriff Knights, they can deal some good damage on the charge, but they get on the ground and start getting attacked by that spider, it's going to be ugly. And then the Greenskins brought some Black Orcs in as well. You can see down here the Mornghouls just get absolutely shredded. And now remember Noctilus, who's been so tough this whole fight. See, when he gets surrounded by Black Orcs, this is not the fight that Noctilus wants to be in. He doesn't have as many summons left. And this is the kind of fight in which he will get absolutely picked apart by very heavily armored infantry. That is just not the way that he needs to be fighting. He needs a large target or to be surrounded by chaff, because he's not going to be individually good against a lot of these Black Orcs. The Haunter is doing his best to help him, but I mean, it is too little and too late. You see, look at the hit the Haunter there took between Wurzag and the Spider. You can see over here, Bretonnia unsuccessfully able to bring down the other Spider. And so the Greenskins are definitely looking to cement their last man standing here, or last boy standing, last get standing, however they want to do it. Noctilus is attempting to flee away from this situation, as well he should. There's really no hope for him if he stays here, but you can see the Spider firing at him. Black Orcs are in pursuit. Meanwhile, the remaining Bretonnian forces are being dealt with, and we're going to end up with a good old-fashioned chase to end this thing. Noctilus is like, maybe they won't see me behind this tree. Nope, he sees me. So here comes Wurzag. And of all the people that were going to take down Noctilus in this fight, I wouldn't necessarily have expected it to be Wurzag. And Wurzag actually killed Alberich as well with a effigy in the Git that I did not catch earlier. Not on screen, at least. I saw it when I watched the replay prior to all this. But yeah, Noctilus goes down, and that leaves just Alberich has not died. Whoops. I accidentally gave away what's going to happen to Alberich, but I think it was pretty obvious at this point what Alberich's fate is, so my bad. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. Up to almost 13,000 points, and I know that the gap is going to be close here between Dill Pickle and Ionale, and I'm really curious to see who the winner... Actually, I know who the winner is. Hopefully you all are curious, because we don't always get to see this, where the gap is just about right between the player who got a really high score and a player who's actually going to win. Yeah, here's Alberich with the effigy, and he is in big trouble. He goes down. More points on the board for the Greenskins, who have some very expensive units to finish up here at the end. How many of them will they actually kill, though, versus how many will rout? Because that can play into the score as well. Obviously, the Skaven, who submitted this replay, lost, and it says Valiant Defeat, but let's see who did win. It was Dill Pickle, actually, and it ended up being by a pretty decent margin. I kind of expected to see the Greenskins get a little closer here, but there was a pretty decent point gap, and unfortunately for the Greenskins, if they would have been able to get over this fight just a little bit sooner and start doing some damage, I feel like they could have won here. And it was an interesting pick by Ionale, who ended up being the last one standing. Honestly, like I said, look at that, 64% of his army standing. So he got a nice bonus here at the end, but just not enough kills and damage done in order to make up the point difference by Dill Pickle, who just did a great job with his Vampire Coast build in this one. Really enjoyed it, and I appreciate Ickaclaw sending it in, even though it wasn't one that he won. It's always cool to share replays, you know, even if you don't end up having the performance in it that I'm sure you want. Like, I'm sure Ickaclaw wanted to Skaven own everybody, right? I mean, whenever you play, you want to win, and he didn't here, and I appreciate him submitting a whole bunch of replays. He's an awesome member of the Discord. Love having him there. Appreciate him sending this one in, and you know, you gotta love that Skaven energy that he brings into things, you know, a little Warpstone, yes. Anyway, Dill Pickle did a great job overall. Carronades were a waste here, but honestly, if you think about the fact that he lost 4 Carronades just outright, I mean, that's a heck of a performance to lose 4 artillery pieces and still come out on top like this, so congrats to him. And then Ionale didn't exactly use all the spells the way that I would have or something, but you know what? He survived it. And despite the fact that all these Night Gobbos basically got thrown in the trash, I mean, he held his forces together the way he should, survived the Bretonnian attack, and did a good job at swinging around and finishing the battle. So thank you, Ionale. And then Alorland de Furioso, if I said that anywhere near right, with Alberich. I love the Goon Squad army that he picked. This actually could be a whole lot of fun in FFA. It didn't win this time, but he did get a pretty fair number of points. I just think his engagement against the Greenskins earlier was the wrong one. When you see all those Black Orcs and the Spiders, no, just steer clear of that. Go somewhere else. You don't want any part of that. Not until they get weakened a little, because Black Orcs are extremely difficult to kill with cavalry or other units. They just pump out a lot of damage, and they're very heavily armored. So unless you can break their leadership, that's not a fight that you want to get to be in. And you can't do it with terror. You just have to straight up break their leadership. So interesting fight there. And Ickaclaw, of course, we saw the Doom Flayers and the Dwarf Thing Menace. Those units are so much fun. His Jezzails ended up not getting any value. And that's his tough position to be in. The Teethbreakers did get some value. It's not going to show a lot of kills. But yeah, just ended up being too many skirmishers to be able to hold off the forces of the Vampire Coast. And the Vampire Coast can be a pain to hold off because those Morghuls have good mass. And whenever you're the Skaven army like that without the Rat Ogres, those Morghuls are moving pretty quick. And it's pretty hard to keep them out of your lines. And so it's going to be a tough situation for Ickett, especially considering that terrain. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this one. Thank you to those members of my community who submitted this one. Figured like this would be some fun stuff to kind of interject over like in the middle of all this dog dirt tournament. That way it's not just all 1v1s. I'll try and keep things varied up for you here. Anyway, I do hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. And hey, I'll be back soon with some more content for you. See you then.